Yeah, hi everybody. So I'm excited. I'm really excited about this because, for a while, the actual events committee, right, hadn't come out with anything. So AAD keeps putting out this great content, and we keep doing these unique things that I want to talk about in a little bit. But this is kind of back to our true form of panel, really to take place of the luncheon, which right now is in a virtual format. So look forward to some of this future content that we keep pushing out. A few things I do want to mention. AAD is due to Carrie and Meg and Mignon and all the great leadership is putting out some amazing content. So keep your eye on their events pages because they're doing, AAD member in focuses, Economic Development 101 series, Road Trip Arizona, which is really neat, trivia happy hours, education and workforce updates, and then our upcoming fall forum, which will continue. And so there's a lot of neat content in a variety of formats. And so just keep your eye out and register when you attend or when you want to attend something, and reach out to any one of us if you have any questions about AAD as a whole or an upcoming event. And so really, I'm excited about today's topic. Today is on the pursuit to the project. And so we have a great panel, we have a great moderator, and I'm going to pass it over to our esteemed moderator, Stephanie Hertzberg. Stephanie, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see so many friendly faces out there. Thanks, Chad, and thank you for the opportunity to moderate this panel today. This is one of my favorite topics because it really breaks down how you have to keep things moving through the pursuit process. A lot of times the first meeting tends to be the easy part, but it's really about the follow-up, value proposition, and ultimately finding a way to set yourself apart in order to secure a project win. It also transcends through different roles and products and services, but ultimately the key is to take something from a pursuit to a win. The key to take something from a pursuit to a win is fairly constant across industries. Today, we're going to hear from a group of professionals that are at the front lines of winning projects and hear insights on what keeps them in prime position to continue to have success. To start, we have Kim Davids, Vice President and General Manager at the Weitz Company, the 6th oldest general contractor in the nation. In just 5 years at Weitz, Kim has seen the office grow in scale of projects and volume of work. Some of the most notable projects include the SkyTrain, which is the automatic people mover that transports passengers at Phoenix Sky Harbor from the rental car to the terminals. I'm sure many of you have been on it when we all used to travel. Additionally, Weitz is working on a large confidential hyperscale data center in the West Valley. Next, we have Brian Friedman, who is the City of Glendale Economic Development Director. If you haven't heard, Brian and his team have been busy locating some amazing projects that I think all of us will benefit from. The first and most recent is the Crystal Lagoon, which is a one-of-a-kind attraction that uses water innovation and technology to create a beach paradise. Additionally, White Claw also recently located in Glendale. The Hard Seltzer Company is building a 950,000 square foot industrial building on a 95-acre property. The factory is one of the first projects in the over 1,300-acre Wolf Logistics industrial campus, alongside a recently built Red Bull canning facility, which is just north of the White Claw site. Finally, someone who's made a significant impact in Pinal County and the region as a whole, Jacob Anderson, President and CEO of Saint Holdings. Saint Holdings is a multifaceted real estate investment and development company with holdings in industrial, land, multifamily, residential, and agriculture. He is helping to transform Pinal County into an electric vehicle manufacturing hub with companies like Lucid Motors, which broke ground late last year in the first phase of factory construction in Casa Grande, representing an investment in over $300 million. That project is scheduled for completion in late 2020. And most recently, in July of 2020, Nikola Corporation, a global transportation leader in zero emissions and infrastructure solutions, broke ground on a 1 million square foot facility in Coolidge, Arizona. Thank you, panelists, for agreeing to join us today. And now I'd like to take a minute and invite each of you to tell a little bit more about yourselves and your company. Kim, why don't you start us off?
So thank you for the great introduction, Stephanie. Is that good? I'm getting some feedback on my end. Sounds okay. So thank you for the great introduction. Yeah, we are the sixth oldest, or one of the six oldest general contractors in the nation, 165 years old this year, 42 in the Valley. I have had the great opportunity to be the general manager for the last 3 years after joining White's about 5 years ago. I've been in the Valley for the last 14, and it feels like home. And I love the ability to serve on panels and be a part of groups like this for the economic development, to see the future growth. As Stephanie talked about, we do some really complex and interesting projects, you know, the SkyTrain, and I love the concept of when we used to travel, riding the people mover, and have just really started on the mission critical track, both here locally and in some of our other offices across the country. And, you know, for a long time, we've been focused on senior living. So we have a very robust resume in senior living, and really like that focus on that market segment to give back to the community and for our aging residents.
Great, thanks, Cam. Brian, why don't you go next?
Sure, thank you, Stephanie. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Friedman. I'm a native Arizonan and been with the city of Glendale now for over 20 years. I was the past head of special projects, building the stadiums and the arenas and everything out west. And then for the last, probably 13, 14 years, been leading economic development. But if anybody that really knows Glendale knows that truly it is a team effort, in our case, a pretty deep bench with Randy Huggins and Lori German and Jesse Peterson, and Daniel and David and Susie and a few other folks that, as well as Lori German, who have been, you know, joining the team here recently. And I woke up this morning feeling super grateful for the chance to see a community grow the way Glendale has, from really a tier 1 bedroom community to the left of Phoenix, and into what it is today. And it doesn't happen alone, and in my case with a ton of help. And I'm just grateful to be here today to share a few of these secrets and a couple, a little bit of tidbits of information about how Glendale is doing it and has done it for a while, and appreciate the chance to be here today.
Thanks, Brian. Jakob?
Good morning, everybody. Stephanie, thanks for the introduction. It's nice to see some familiar faces and friends here on the screen today. So Jakob Anderson State Holdings, we are basically land developers, land entitlement, concentrated mainly in Pinal County. As said, we've been involved in large job creating projects such as Lucid, Nikola Motors, Tractor Supply Company. We're very involved with economic development, AED, GPEC, Arizona Commerce Authority, and the process of courting businesses to come here. And at the same time, we handle a lot of affairs such as workforce. We sit on a lot of boards to enable us to better understand our future for water and the growth of the region, and how we can grow together and grow better and collaborate to leave the place we live in today as a better place for our children that follow us. So I'm glad to be on the panel today. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. Now we're gonna move into our questions here. We are going to save a bit of time at the end for Q&A, so think about some things you might wanna ask, and if you could just submit those in the chat box, that would be fantastic. We'll try to get to as many as we can at the end. So first I wanna level set the conversation and hear from each of you. What does the typical deal cycle look like from your perspective? Who's involved? What's the timeline? And maybe you can give me an example, one example of a project that might illustrate that cycle. Brian, why don't you go first?
Sure, thank you, Stephanie. It really does vary based on the client, but just to give you an idea, by industries, typically medical is a bit slower. With our Dignity Health product and our banner product recently, they were years in the making. That's that industry, that's how they make decisions. They're very thoughtful about it, and they have boards, and it just takes a bit. If you look at, I'll give you two quick examples here. If you look at the example of Topgolf and the example of White Claw, they had very different expectations. So in the case of Topgolf, we met them. They really wanted to be in our community. We knew that their competition was looking to go points south there. And so together we worked backwards by listening to the client, what their expectations are and what their needs are. No different than a Super Bowl date. We just simply create a Gantt chart that meets their expectations and launch. That's the whole program. So in the case of Topgolf, we had 68 days to rezone the property, create a purchase sale agreement to sell city land, create a development agreement, host a full design charrette, issue at-risk G&D permits, and Lori German, who's on the show here today, to organize a groundbreaking. And we did that in 68 days, all of it, because it's required in order to meet the client's expectations. And so while it met the scope of the law, I can't say it was super easy, but the results speak for themselves because Topgolf's there today. In the case of White Claw, we met them in October and they were substantially complete in about 8 months. And that's from the first time we knew they existed to the time that you see the condition you see the building in now. It really was a privilege to work with them at their schedule and meet their needs. They were 50 million cases behind in production for White Claw nationwide. So they needed it immediately with that kind of a backlog and demand for their product. And so we basically said yes. To be quite honest with the group here, the fastest we've ever built was Conair's 1.2 million square feet, was 9 months in a day for 1.2 million square feet. And we thought that was pretty blazing quick, and their expectation was 7 months. And it's right at that size in terms of a first floor non-mezzanine foundation. So we had to come up with some innovative ideas about how to meet their needs. That included construction techniques that expedited that. And so I would summarize by saying it's the client, it's their money, it's their schedule, it's their demands, and if you can possibly do it, work together in exacting schedule that is worked out to literally to the day, and you both stick to it as two parties and hold each other accountable on a 24-hour cycle. And that's exactly what we did in those two examples of Topgolf and of White Claw. And that's why you see them in the condition they are that quick today.
Wow, that's incredible. Jakob, do you want to take a...
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. I think a good example for everyone here is probably the Lucid project, just because it's out there now. You're seeing 800,000 square feet vertical tilt up that's out there, and it's such an exciting new product. And for them, they were, and they are, a disruptor in their own business and a startup. So there were many nuances that don't come with someone who maybe have been an existing business for 50 years and everyone knows who they are and they can just write a check. But I think the collaborative process there was much more complex than anyone just seeing it built today would understand. First of all, you're dealing with site selectors who are down selecting the sites across the US, then regionally, and then locally. So you're competing for that. So initially you've got this process that involves the land, ensuring that the land has what they need to accommodate their use on the land, and that means coordinating with obviously local utilities and the infrastructure that's required to cater for their needs. At the same time as that's going on, there's a portion of the company. So these companies all have heads of each department, and each head of each department has their own job to do. Whether it's the workforce guys, the training guys, the manufacturing guys, the CEOs, the financial guys, and we really have to end up dealing with all of them, because we have to satisfy and tick the box on our PIFs, which we call them, the project information forms. So the process there was pretty lengthy, because at the same time as looking at the land and the utilities and the efficiencies that we can offer from that perspective, infrastructure, roads, workforce was key. When you're bringing 2,500 employees over 5 years to a region, that's a significant number. And when they are bringing in a new wage category to the area, they've got to understand where that qualified workforce is going to come from. And when you're building $1 billion factory, you're not doing that for 5 to 10 years. You're doing that hopefully for 30 to 40 years. So with that comes the need for training, so that they can have the training facilities able, and the schools and the colleges training the future workforce to feed their workforce on an ongoing matter. So there's a lot of cohesiveness that needs to happen. And at the same time, then you're trying to coordinate the cities, the county, and the state from an incentives point of view, because everyone is looking to see where they can best be for tax purposes, lifestyle purposes, and so there's a lot of coordination needed. And so that, for example, there, it seems like they've just broken ground a couple of years ago, and it was an overnight success. But from when we first met them to them closing on the property and getting finance, it was a 3-year process, which all happens in the background and under non-disclosure agreements. So it's not easy to talk about when you're excited about a big project like that. it's tough, but you've got to stick to the rules and just get the job done.
Well, and what's incredible about that is it just seems like you have to be involved in every aspect of the deal, from, you described the educational side to the workforce to the land, construction. So it's extremely comprehensive from your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. But once you've done it to that degree and to such precision as that deal, it really taught us in my office that it's good to have involvement with everyone, from the staff level to the decision makers in the city, the county, and the state, whether it be the engineer reviewing at the staff level in the city, or the mayor and council being educated on what the benefits of bringing a company such as this are like. And we end up sitting on a lot of boards and a lot of committees to bring all that together, but we're here for the long term, not just an overnight in and out.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Kim?
Yeah, so at some point throughout the whole process with what Brian does and what Jakob does, they might bring in a contractor depending on the level of procurement. And it's interesting. Some clients, we've had folks in pre-con and discussions for a number of years, just from whether the pro forma, they had something pre-COVID, and then something like a pandemic hits, and then their focus shifts, so then it might delay maybe the start of the project, or something financially within their budget changes. So a lot of times we have these partnerships with certain clients, and the process can be pretty long. When we ask them, hey, when do you think you want to start construction? They have kind of a pie in the sky focus, and we sometimes put a little factor of well, maybe there's some gotchas that might happen within their schedule, so that we can focus on being more timely in our deliverables to them. But to Brian's point, on that hyperscale data center out in the West Valley, we had really, it was a new market segment for us, and we had a project going up in our Des Moines office, our Des Moines region, and we had just gotten started, and it was the customer said, hey, we have another project down in the Phoenix area, and we'd really like for you guys to take a look at it. And we hadn't even finished one yet, so we were really focusing on, is this a product line? Can we be successful? And their schedule was very, very rapid. So the budget time to submit some pricing was a couple of weeks, and then we had some final reviews. We flew out to meet with them and had some final reviews. That was on a Wednesday. I signed a contract on a Sunday, and we were mobilized the following Wednesday. And it was the fastest mobilization in the White's Company history. But that all was because that owner, just similar to White Claw, needed to get boots on the ground and start opening their facilities. And so they had a very streamlined process. We worked with them through that. Obviously mobilization, there was a lot of things that needed to happen, but we were out there actually starting construction within, really from the time of the RFP, it was about, less than a 30-day cycle, but from, our last meeting to the time we mobilized on site was about a week. But, to the point of Brian and Jakob, there's so many people that are a part of it. It's the partnerships, it's the communication, it's the cities, to make sure that they're on board with the process and what we're trying to do from a permitting standpoint and the requirement standpoint from turnover. There's a lot of legwork that needs to go in up front to make sure that, what our expectations are and our deliverables to the client are met throughout that entire process.
So Kim, we're just going to stick with you for a minute. You talk about the data center market being sort of a new or emerging market. Are there certain projects or project types or client types that are not a good fit or don't fit into your overall business plan? And how do you determine what works well for you, for the White's Company, and maybe what isn't such a great fit?
So, really, we're a company based on culture, and we really need to be aligned with the company and the culture of our clients as well. Sometimes it's just a gut feel. I've heard a lot of times that the process is equated to dating or a marriage. A lot of times, you go into an interview and it's about the synergy in the room. You're at the table and you're at the interview because of your resume and, your performa and because of your reputation. And it's really comes down to, you know, can we work with these individuals, whether it's a 6-month project or a 6-year project. It's how can we relate? Are we going to be honest with each other? Is it full transparency? Can we, you know, can I trust these folks to, you know, to really understand when I'm delivering bad news? Because we all understand, right, that, you know, in a perfect world, you know, projects go, you know, soup to nuts, and, you know, there's no hiccups, but there always is, whether it, you know, you have an unforeseen, or, you know, just so many options that could happen. But it's really about trying to come together and figure out what does that look like, you know, for the best at the client at the end of the day, whether it's, you know, quality or cost or schedule that needs to be modified. But it's really the focus of, you know, being a true team player. And if we don't feel that we can have that and forge that quality relationship, you know, we will obviously turn away a project. You know, the other thing that plays into it is, can we deliver? You know, sometimes, you know, I think before COVID, a lot of us were, you know, dealing with manpower issues and scheduling issues. There was a lot of work to go around, and, you know, individuals wanted to, you know, hey, can you do this project? And just from a forecasting standpoint, you know, to really stretch and just say yes to anything. Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. As contractors, we want all the work, but, you know, in order for us, we take a look at our staffing plan and the people that we have, the quality folks that we can put on those projects to make sure that we can deliver, because we don't want to be in a situation at the end of the day where we stretched or we committed to something that we couldn't do. So really, again, back to that relationship piece of, you know, do you really need to start on this day? Can we maneuver within this? And, you know, just having that open dialogue to make sure that we as the Whites Company can be just as good of a partner to, you know, the architect, the design team, and the end user client in that entire process.
Great, thank you. Jakob, can you talk a little bit on that same vein, but, you know, you have some projects that are built around, you know, electric vehicle manufacturing, or, you know, your data center site. How do you keep, you know, the right groups of people, or create those synergies within those groups and make sure that you have the right mix there?
Yeah, absolutely. For us, it's a little bit different because we're thinking about the land planning and then what's regionally around us. And then it depends on where we are. You know, if you own the neighboring land, you obviously want to protect the value of that and make sure that that has the best value and the best use going forward for the city. So true coordination with whether it be the city or the county in their general plan and what their future looks like. And so, I mean, I've been here, I know I've got a funny accent. I'm obviously originally from London and been here for 15 years and down in Pinal County, which is probably unusual for a Londoner to be down there working. But I mean, we were pretty close with the city of Casa Grande, for example, when we built Central Arizona Commerce Park and helped them redo their general plan on the west side corridor to create the industrial corridor that exists today. I mean, initially we had, you know, I-2 heavy industrial sitting next to residential planned areas, which just wasn't going to work in the long run. The downturn changed that, and the general plan changed that. And so now we really have cohesive uses next to each other. You can then sort of go closer in and then look at what infrastructure is in the area from a land use perspective. Obviously, heavy industrial rail needs to have access to the rail. So that's not going to be good for residential. What corridors do we have from the perspective of highways, freeway access, etc.? And then, of course, what infrastructure is there? How far away do we have to pull water, sewer, electric, gas? If it's industrial, often those users are heavier, have larger requirements than the residential. So those are factors we've got to take into consideration. But your question was really, how do you, with the prospects, you know, how potentially do you end up turning them away? You know, if they're not a good fit, the solar boom's been happening for the last sort of 5 years here. And we very methodically spent about 2 years interviewing probably, I would say, 60 people, because we had everyone and their solar hat on, whether it be brokers or land bankers or advisors to solar companies trying to tie up a lot of land on options for a long period of time, and they just wanted to tie up everything. Well, doing that wasn't the best use for the land. It wasn't necessarily best use for the neighbors, wasn't the best use for the city. So we'd spent 2 years, rather than jumping into it, interviewing people, and very methodically worked with the city and the county. That actually was the city of Coolidge, and interviewed the right groups. And we turned away, numerous offers, dozens of offers from the solar companies. And we ended up with, out of the 5 largest solar deals that have been announced recently, we ended up with 3 of them, all within our area. And there's large 100 megawatt deals on large pieces of land, about 1,000 acres. That didn't happen overnight. That was methodical placement of where they need to be, how they can get their power, where do they take their power to, what the neighbors are doing, how does it not disrupt the land planning and the general plan of the city and the county, and how their infrastructure requirements would be minimized by what they do compared to what an industrial user would need, i.e. truck traffic, employee traffic is minimum for a solar site. So a lot of things to take into consideration. Obviously, it's hard to turn people down when they're making you a great offer, but you've got to understand that offer. Where's the money coming from? Who are you dealing with? Are they the right person to be dealing with, or are they just going to try and turn your piece of land to the end user? And now it's not affordable for the end user to win what they're bidding on, for example. So we have to be pretty methodical in who we choose to do business to from our land perspective.
Okay. We're going to shift a little bit here and go to Brian. Brian, can you talk a little bit about how you overcome perceptions that people might have in the marketplace, and sort of building upon this notion of, if you have certain types of businesses that might be in your area or within your development or within your company, how do you kind of break away from that? And from a city's perspective, what does that entail, Brian?
Sure, thank you. This particular question is really near and dear to our hearts in the West Valley. And I think certainly Glendale is the economic engine of the West Valley and a tier 1 city just next to Phoenix. I've spent the last couple decades managing that item alone. And it's been very real for us. It's been a very substantive part of our discussions about how we make sure here in the West Valley, we have every single amenity that exists in the East Valley. Because of the difference of the way Phoenix developed over time, lots of the assets and initial infrastructure development and other capital issues and all happened in the East Valley. And so as the West Valley comes into its own, we needed to make sure we had our own sets of things so that the captive market of about 2 million people, depending on where you draw the line, or something like Denver, has its own downtown. And I believe Westgate's shaping up now to be the West Valley's downtown, much like the LA Basin has several significant areas. It has its own skyline, kind of like Tempe or Phoenix, and is developing in that fashion. We have struggled to make sure that when we meet with clients and end users or site selectors, brokers, the question of where do I get my BMW fixed comes up far more than you would actually think. And they may like the property, but they need really to know that. And it can't be, 30 miles away over on the other side of Loop 101. And so the fact that we now have a BMW dealership, the fact that we have a couple malls, we have 2 of the 4 Valley sporting teams, we have the luxury sort of kitschy breakfast eateries like Matt's Big Breakfast and Barrio Queen for lunch, and the fact that the casino's kind of made its foray here in a very large manner, and Topgolf, and the list continues to grow. We have systematically ticked those things off to make sure that our demographic, which can support these end user type things, our population has these kind of end user amenities, and that we in the West Valley can purport that. They can see it physically. They don't have to ask the question. It's obvious. As soon as you see them, you know the demographics are there to support them, because folks like that are running out of Germany and the East Coast don't put dealerships in places that they aren't supported by the demographics, which gives the business community confidence. And so that for us has been, at least from in my tenure, 20+ year journey to make sure that all of the amenities that are here, all of the packaging is put together so that Glendale and the West Valley can fairly compete. And it's been literally, I would say, a whole lot of people in our jurisdictions sort of career work to make sure that that is a reality.
So would you say that when you talk about people in your jurisdiction, is it kind of a partnership with members within the communities or like stakeholders or business owners? Is it a collaborative effort when you're talking about overcoming those perceptions or selling the story of Glendale and all the great things that it has?
Sure. Yeah, and I think the perception certainly over time, what's happened is, I think from the earlier commentary of, I really love what Kim said officially too, and same for Jakob about the items that they hit on. I think they're super real. And for us, the notion of perception has been really important to those that have actually made the investment, the pioneers that were out here early, like the Van Tiles, for example, who have 4 or 5 luxury dealerships now, either built or under construction. Certain families or large, mega organizations, billionaire organizations, there are 6 or 7 of them in the Valley. They all own property in and around Westgate or along the Loop 101. And they have single-handedly changed over a period of time through that relationship component part, helped us to partner with us to change that perception. We're always open for more friends, but we're very grateful to probably a select dozen individuals. Literally, they may represent corporations, but it is about trust. It is about confidence. It's about the ability to sleep at night. And do you trust your partner? Do you like them? As local government, we serve everyone, but the truth of the matter is, as Kim shared, we're human beings too. We need to perform. We sing for our supper as well. On the end of the year, how did we do to, we took taxpayer dollars to support our group to provide for the citizens of Glendale. And if we can enjoy ourselves along the way, like Kim was mentioning, and sort of partner with people that we really, really can't wait to talk to when they see their name come up on the phone, they can feel that on the other end, that there is more than just a business relationship. There is personal liking, and they can trust us that we won't let them down, whether it's Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And I think as a culture, we had to work a lot harder than the average because things weren't demographically there for us in the past as they are now. And what's left is this vapor of a really great, fantastic relationship that really is beyond a business relationship. And now we're seeing things come in instead of one-offs in a group or 6 months to a year of a lag time. We're seeing things come in like LG in the Air Park with 4 buildings, Van Tile with 5 projects, Mr. Huffman with 4. So these are very large organizations that are coming in with handfuls of projects at one time. And we are extremely humble and grateful as a community for the chance to serve in that fashion, for sure.
That's great. Kim, can you talk a little bit about overcoming perceptions? I know a lot of times people in the AEC industry sort of get pigeonholed in different types of projects. You've obviously been able to transcend through that. Can you talk a little bit about how your approach to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's no secret that when I took over at the Whites Company, it was we were not doing very well in the Valley. I think some people were like, "Oh, is White still here? We don't see your banners around town." I thought you guys, moved away, went back to Des Moines, and it was pretty humbling to have some of that experience. And I looked at the team, and we just said we can't allow that to be any further. And the fact that when I took over, I said, let's look at the people that we have relationships with, from architects, designers, clients we've done work with before. Who do we want to do work with? And let's just call them and let's just meet them. It's a new opportunity when you have new leadership or new team members to just kind of do a refresh and a reset. And, for the longest time, I mentioned senior living. Well, senior living has been our bread and butter for a very long time. But when I took over, I didn't know that we, have built many of the malls in the Valley and, the office buildings and, SkyTrain and aviation. I mean, we really have a robust resume. And, sometimes we can talk ourselves into why we shouldn't go out for a project because, we haven't done it in so many years or vice versa. But, I think the theme here is relationships and people, and really it's about making those connections and being open and honest. Yeah. So we might not have done, a fire station in the past, 10 years, but, but we've done, X, Y, and Z. They're very similar. And, and we can build anything, right? I mean, we can sell ice to an Eskimo, but at the end of the day, I think in the operational world, in the general contracting world, the best business development is your operations team. If you're executing on the jobs and your performance is there from start to finish. I mean, I think sometimes they say the last, you can do well up to the, 95th percent And then that last 5%, they'll always remember that, that turnover, that warranty process, that punch list, when they're moving in, if you're the good client, that in and of itself is just going to, say people, hey, I want to go work with that customer again. And people talk. There's no, if somebody says, hey, I'm looking to build the next, White Claw plant, who should we call? And there's a lot of different relationships out there, and just word of mouth and forging those trusted relationships that do extend beyond just the business transaction. Sure, if I'm just calling you and the first thing I talk about is, hey, what's new in Glendale today, that's not really okay. You gotta care about the person and their life and their family, and really focus on that. But to me, perception is reality. If people out there don't realize that, what you can and what you're capable of, and your resume, then you really need to step it up and get out there and pound the pavement. And I told him I wasn't going to do this, but that's why I hired Chad Schleicher to join the team. I'm excited to have him here and help me in that process, because he brings a bunch of relationships that I may not have, or that we may not have had at the Whites Company. And we're just, we're trying to continue to grow and get our name out there.
Great. Chad's an amazing addition to the team. So that's wonderful. So Jakob, can you talk a little bit about effective ways that you and your company uses to get in front of clients or prospects? You mentioned a little bit about, interviewing solar companies and things like that in the process. Are people coming to you, or are you having to reach out a lot? And what does that process look like?
I would say, well, now people are coming to us, but there was a lot of making the calls rather than receiving the calls in the beginning. So now it's more weeding out the sort of the ones who we want to deal with and are for real, not just after something. But in the beginning, yeah, I mean, it's forums such as this, memberships with GPEC, being aligned with the Arizona Commerce Authority, making sure that the world knows, or the people that you deal with that need to know your product. I think that's important, knowing that you've gone that extra step to be better than the next piece of land, whether you've solved utilities issues or infrastructure issues that are important, to be sharp and fast in response time when you're asked to supply some information, and then be available. That's important to us in our business. I would say I'm very lucky in the collaborations we've had from the state level to the city and county level, where we've really been able to, I mean, we're vetting who we're dealing with, but we've really been able to pull teams together to market ourselves as able to perform, which I think is a big issue for site selectors and the head of the global manufacturing for a company. If they're out on a site search, it's their neck on the line when they're endorsing a site. And if we're giving them information, which is a frustrating part of our business, because we've got competitors who give information that isn't right and isn't true, and then the user has to weed that information out, lose time, and either get frustrated and move elsewhere, or we are able to rescue it and prove that what we've said is correct, and we've been honest, and we've given them the right infrastructure details that they needed to get them there. So I think it's knowledge and collaboration, and then really working with, well, for us, it's the ACA, GPEC, local economic development is hugely important. And then keeping an eye on the market, forums like LinkedIn, making sure you're aligned, you just don't click accept to everyone. It's, who you in aligned business with, who works in the same area as you, and what can you do for them and what can they do for you? And I would say cold calling is not a yesteryear thing. I think that's still important, but you've got to have a reason to. You can't just put your hand up or send someone an email and say, hey, I've got something I want to discuss with you. You've got to give them a short, sharp message as to why they should be calling you back. I'm pretty confident that most of the times when we do that and we get that call back, we're on the short list to be met with. And once we've met with them, we can prove it ourselves.
Great. Brian, can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah. So for us, I mean, I've not had the pleasure to work with Kim before, but I really like what she said. And the same for Jaco about his approach to business and being asked now. So I'll go ahead and ask if I can coax you up. Come on up to Glendale, give us a chance for some development. But from my point of view, you know, looking at the way that we would want to purport ourselves, I think as a team, as a small team of just a handful of practitioners, none of us are truly classically trained in economic development. We are all hail from someplace else. We're a very diverse team, and we're all people servants. We're all there for a very specific reason, is to help people. And I think that's something that's felt. It's a felt experience between human beings. I know Kim talks a lot about the relationship and using that and honing that. You just don't ask the question, well, what's going on in Glendale? You kind of get to know someone, you have a relationship with them. To us, that's the most important thing. So I think what's happening is truly, I like to say it's like all this, what do you call it, strategic planning and effort and things on a bookshelf and all these super smart people that make all these volumes of things that collect dust. I really don't think that's it. I think what's happening is people are liking the human touch and the human element. They're believing that they're not going to have to go back to their boss, their board, their CEO and explain why the project's off budget, off timing, costs more money. They're used to cities not caring. They're used to people there just being bureaucrats who collect a paycheck, and they can tell by their attitude. And when they get a hold of a city that's different, but we no longer really have to sing for our supper, what we're seeing is that in the open market, they're just going to the next building that was just done. There's 7 or 8 million square feet under construction now with another 6 million in CDs and plan review. And they're just asking the other company, what went on? How did they do this? We'd like to do the same thing. What company did you use? Who are your subcontractors? Who's your architect? We're going to repeat this. We're going to go to them and ask them what you gave them, please. And that's what we're seeing now, is that they're talking out in the open market. We really don't have to do nearly as much as we used to do. They're just sort of saying, if you promise to do what you did here, then we will come. But you have to give us what happened here. And so I feel like as a city culture, from our city council to our city manager to all of our sister development departments and the team here, we're very unified and it's part of a very deep culture now within our organization. I think longstanding on the second floor, and then for sure 5 years with Kevin and the council. And I think that has its own inertia now. And so it's really others sort of singing for you versus you having to do it for yourself. And I'm really grateful. I never thought we'd actually be here, but we kind of are. So thanks to everybody that's watching, you know, from Glendale that contributes in that fashion and that has spoken well of us, because it's made a big impact, I think, for lots of us and all of our sister cities that are next to Glendale, because we're all part of a fabric, and because the water level is rising for all of us. And so we're happy to be part of that.
Yeah, that's incredible. It speaks volumes for the community, for sure. Kim, can you talk a little bit? We just have a few minutes before we're going to open it up to Q&A, but I'd like to hear from your perspective as well on how you get in front of clients or prospects.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what Jacob said, you know, sometimes it's a cold call, you know, I mean, you're watching a panel and, you know, that's, hey, I saw you on the panel today. You know, that was really great, you know, actually paying attention to, you know, whether they're published or, you know, what their hobbies are, doing a little bit of background to reach out and really make that connection. I was on a panel at the beginning of COVID, and somebody had reached out to me and said, you know, great job. And I was like, oh, that was great. And so then we just started talking, and it was a councilman in the city of Goodyear. And it, you know, just, you never know. I mean, that's the thing too, you know, it's not just the CEOs and the presidents, and you don't know who is going to be whether it's an influencer, the decision maker. I mean, really just priding yourself on making those connections and understanding it. And sometimes it's not just a give to get, right? I mean, sometimes it's just, hey, I might find, you know, somebody who has, you know, enjoys a glass of wine with me, or, you know, whether, you know, going out fishing or whatever. Sometimes it's really just about, you know, not to me, it's not about at the end of the day, I'm here to find a job. right? I'm here to or get a project or that. It's about, what's important to the client, what's important to the process, and and maybe if it's a scope or a project that the Voice company doesn't work, and I'm okay, well, what are you looking for and how can I help you, and making referrals to help some other trades partners, and getting them in connection to help, if we're not the answer, helping them find the answer as well. So it's really about just trying to figure out what is the best scenario for everyone, and really honing in on that. But the concept of, don't be afraid to walk up to somebody that you don't know, to make a phone call, to send an email. Sometimes it takes, I have a client right now, I think I've sent him like 6 emails, and it's like, hey, I know you're busy. And sometimes in COVID, it gets a little cumbersome, but you just have to be, if you're really focused on it, you got to be tenacious and, and know your stuff, and just, and be authentic. Don't that whole concept of, just trying to, act like you're not trying to find out about a job. It's, you have to really mean it. People will read through that BS.
Absolutely. It's not transactional. It's
Yep.
much more about the long-term relationship and how you can partner. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, and maybe Jakob, you could lead us off, but how has your business been impacted by the pandemic in terms of getting projects done, or people reaching out, or just the work in general?
Yeah, I would say from the industrial perspective, because we do quite large land pieces, we're involved obviously with residential and commercial as well, but the busy part of our market right now is the industrial. The things that were in escrow at the beginning of the pandemic, when it first came out, they didn't fall out of escrow. I think there was a moment where everyone sat back and no one really knew the effect of COVID-19 on us as human beings, and we saw the Asian impact initially, and then it coming through Europe, and then the stopping of flights. But the projects we were dealing with were projects that needed to go through a process, a planning process, an approval process, conditional use permits, and that also involved obviously going out to bid with construction companies and then being built. So those the projects currently, they're all in that phase and in that process. So they were always going to be 12 to 18 months out. But then there was the new world of social distancing. So we found that we actually didn't lose one project. What we did find was that everyone asked for 45, 60, 90 days to just press the pause button while everyone reset. And I think those that were willing to work with each other, because we can't necessarily just make that decision straight away. It might have other ramifications with timelines that we've agreed with others, for example. So we made the calls and we got everyone that requested it extensions on their contracts that they were in escrow, for example, or closings set out, so that people could accommodate their new life at working from home, or kids being homeschooled, which we've all had fun experiences with over the last 6 to 9 months.
Yes.
Exactly. And so from that perspective, we weren't affected. And I would say I'm grateful for that. The residential market has been pretty much booming in and around Pinal anyway. We've got all the home builders down there. I think COVID in a way may have benefited a more suburban area where there is natural social distancing, because you're a little bit more spread apart. You can buy a house more affordably there than you can in, say, Metro Phoenix or LA or somewhere like that. So you're seeing that possibility. And I would say from an efficiency perspective, what I've seen is we've got the governmental agencies and the agencies in general have become better online and with technology than we ever have been. I mean, look at us here now. We feel very comfortable sitting here, all of us in our own homes, offices, shared offices, whatever it might be on this forum. Now, yes, we're not all together, but we're still benefiting from what is more together than just a conference call with 5 of us, right? Chit-chatting about our experiences. So this has evolved the processes that happen at the city and the governmental level with submittals, for example. You know, I mean, some cities are still taking submittals as hard copies or on discs, and that just doesn't need to happen anymore. You might not necessarily, I mean, I'll give a good example. A notary. A notary is someone you have to go to in person to sign a document that's going to be recognized legally by a title company, right? How do you do that when social distancing is in place and there's no notary in a bank and your title company's only got the front desk person and everyone's working from home? So, you know, that evolved to now having remote notaries being able to legally apply. So those sort of things I think have helped. And where we might, you know, Matthew, who works closely with me, then many of you know, we often do what I call the round robin. We'll do a big tour of Pinal and from here and even the West Valley. And we might spend a day in the car and we'll hit a lot of meetings. And then we'll make sure we've got all the subject matters in every meeting that's needed. Well, we might now not necessarily have so much pressure to cover so much subject matter in one meeting, because a Zoom forum like this feels a little bit like an in-person meeting with screen sharing. With, you might have an engineer that wasn't available for an in-person meeting that can now sit at home because he had something else on, but couldn't make it because of a drive to a meeting, but now could pull up, sit in his car, be on a Zoom and just feel like they're participating in a meeting. And that engineer's point of view on something mattered a lot, because his manager may not have the skills that he does as an engineer to answer some of the questions that the user needs, for example. So I think there's some efficiencies that have happened due to it. But I truly do hope it calms down and we don't have a second wave and we can see each other in person in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now we're going to open it up for Q&A. So if you do have questions, please send them in through the chat. We're going to start with a couple here. Brian, this one's directed to you. And this is verbatim from the question, so you have an admirer here. You and your team are legendary in your speed to market for your locates. You mentioned planning it out to the day. Do you use software, Microsoft Project, or what exactly is your system to keep all the pieces in place and on track?
Sure. Thank you, Kristen, as our City of Peoria neighbor we have. So appreciate that. That was nice. Yeah, we work, usually we use Visio. Because we all, pretty much know how to use that. They're used to seeing it. It's not too hard to populate the cells. And then we have so many of them now. We just pick the one that's closest to it. Has an annexation, doesn't have an annexation. Is already entitled, isn't entitled. Just DR, or DR with, obviously CDs are always required, a design review. So we just pick one now that's the closest and then modify the dates then on the last save Visio that's the closest one. And then we use that initially in our meetings to make sure that everyone agrees on the client side of the house and on the city side what the expectations are. So it's extraordinarily clear. There's no will, going, shoulda, coulda. You'll see a line. Blue will be us and like red will be them. And this is what we agree to as partners, because it's not us and them. It's a partnership to an end goal. Because in the end, what I don't think cities really understand too well is that we're takers, we're not givers. We take people's capital and money, then we charge them for it, and then we make them pay permits and fees, and then we regulate them and inspect them, and all they're doing is really just dumping money into our community. So the least we could do is be partners to help them, to help us, and then charge them 2.9% or 2.2% on all the transactions they do. So we should at least be good partners. Even if you aren't a good partner, you're just selfishly, involved in it for your own sake and for your own, self-benefit, then they're in a business a quarter or two faster, then you get the revenue 2 quarters faster. So no matter how you slice it, like the greedy way or let's say the Kim and Jakob way that's actually thoughtful, you come out ahead if you're a municipality with that viewpoint. And I think business responds well to when they understand that a city who is also developers, we sell land, just like Jakob does. We have lots of it. And we make choices about who we sell to, like Kim does, or who we partner with to build things for us, fire stations, police stations, etc. And then we also partner with people that we want to build in our community because they do other things for us. So I feel like it's really, we're all not so different. We're all part of a continuum and doing what everybody else does. It's just we switch this sort of lever and treat people differently based on whatever transaction you think you're involved with, versus understanding the holistic nature that it's hello to C of O. It's the whole process. And Kim doesn't care, and Jakob either, about what the city department you're in and the little wars and the little idea of silos. They just want a permit. And so I think that ability to provide that document and have them sleep at night is the whole why. That's the why. And then somebody that maybe mostly cares a lot.
I love that. Hello to C of O. It's a nice
Yep.
little tagline there. Kim, can you talk a little bit about what role social media plays in your sales approach?
So self-admittedly, I am not very good about the social media aspect, but it's something that I'm learning. I think there's a certain demographic that that first thing they do, they wake up in the morning and they check their LinkedIn, their Twitter, their Facebook, their Instagram, their Snapchat, and all the other platforms. But really, when you start digging into it, you get to know that your competitors and your other partners in the community are doing some really impressive stuff, whether it be, from a technological standpoint or their sales process or their community outreach, or just recognizing their employees. I mean, it really is just a way to say, hey, look at what we're doing. And I think, self-admitted, I need to get on board and I need to do better of it, or a better job at it. And I think it's the day and age. I mean, like Jakob said, I mean, yes, do we all, it's very weird talking to my computer screen right here, but I can see all your smiling faces as well. So it is, very kind of like you're in an audience to a point, but that concept of we are going digital, and, we all have so many apps on our phone that we can just keep in touch with individuals, from texting to Snapchatting to whatever it may be. And I think, focusing on the social media aspect, if you're not on board, you're behind the game, because it's really where it's that, people are waiting for a doctor's appointment and they're scrolling through it, or it's a football game commercial, they're scrolling through it, and it's just another way for you to get your name and your company, both personally and professionally, out there to show who you are, as your professional brand and your personal brand as well.
Yeah, and Jakob, if you could just talk about that just real quickly. You'd mentioned LinkedIn, and I was on your LinkedIn page for a while, and you have a ton of great content there. So if you could just talk about your approach with social media, that would be great.
Sure. My approach is a bit duplicitous, because personally I have absolutely no social media, and that's a choice I make because I don't really enjoy social media. I don't enjoy what it does to us personally, and I don't enjoy what it does to friends and people's perception of what they need to be worrying about and understanding about others. That's my personal view of it. So I really only have LinkedIn, and we link that to the company. And it was really about 2 years ago, someone turned around to me and said, you're doing all this business and you've got these big companies that are being attracted here. So people are going to start asking who you are. You can't be under the radar for all your life. And so it's just better for you to tell the story than for someone else. And I agreed with that. And so LinkedIn, for example, is a platform where we can just give updates on what we do. We're not there all the time. We're not posting political things. We're not giving our view on other people's approach. It's here's what we do. Here's how we've been doing it. Here's some of the wins we have. And it's informational from a company perspective. And we've found that to be very positive, because you don't get negativity from that. And then it's a platform that I use really to find out who I'm dealing with. A bank puts me in touch with someone within their bank. I'll go on LinkedIn and check them out, or I'll hear about someone, oh, that person sounds interesting, in a forum like this where I might be a spectator or not a panelist, and I'll think, oh, that sounds interesting. Then I can go into LinkedIn, often find that person, send them a message through LinkedIn, but I immediately get off LinkedIn and I will divert them to a phone call or my work email, so that it's shown as serious. I'm not here to tittle tattle on LinkedIn. I get an enormous amount of, hey, people trying to sell me things on LinkedIn. I really don't answer a lot of it. I don't look at the messages on LinkedIn, but it's really, for us, it's a platform to show what we've achieved to date. Yeah,
that's great. Well, with just 5 minutes left, I wanted to see, first off, if there's any other questions that anybody has. I haven't seen any in the chat box. I really appreciate everyone's time. I just kind of wanted to summarize a little bit of what we heard today. There were definitely some themes that rose to the top here, and actually some trends I thought were sort of interesting. From a trend perspective, it seems like projects are getting clustered a little bit more. It's not just about one project, but maybe multiple projects together. Faster project delivery in some cases seems to be a trend. Better use of technology, and obviously the pandemic forcing a lot of this to move into more of a technological response from all partners involved, and just generally more efficiency. So this is all good things I think that we're seeing out there. From a pursuit to project perspective, some of the trends that I heard each of these panelists talk about are, it's really about partnerships, and it seems like that's kind of the key here. Trust, your word of mouth reputation, being responsive, that human touch, caring about people, and, creating a unique value proposition, which is important for all of us to think about as we, try to differentiate ourselves right now. So I want to thank the panelists for a great discussion today. Really appreciate all of you spending the afternoon with us and sharing your insights into your success. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, AED, for hosting us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate y'all.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you to our panelists and Chad for helping to put this together as well. But please stay tuned to our events page for upcoming events, and of course the fall forum. Everybody sign up for that. We're looking forward to seeing everybody there. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.